Michigan Wolverines heading into a week off and probably coming at a good time as we welcome in Brian Boesch from the Michigan Wolverine Radio Network. Brian, thank you so much for joining us.
Anytime, Mark.
Maize and blue, battered and blue after the win over Purdue. The injuries are mounting up in Ann Arbor.
They are. And, this team has always been about depth, especially here over the last few seasons. And I think especially on defense, Wink Martindale probably plays more players than people anticipate. Maybe some fans expect or are totally comfortable with. And we're going to see just how impactful that may be. Now, in terms of length of injuries, we haven't gotten a whole lot in the way of information on some of those. Sharon Moore spoke on Monday and said the Jayshon Barham one should not be all that long, but you never know how these things ebb and flow. But Michigan will be tested, whether that means players are out or they're going to play a little bit less than 100%.
And we saw that the running back position in the win over Purdue, Justice Haynes, had reportedly foot surgery over the weekend. So that's why he was out for Purdue. They're optimistic he'll be back at some point during the season, but we don't have an exact timetable in his absence. Once again, Jordan Marshall came through big, a career day for the sophomore running back.
Yeah, the amazing thing about Marshall is that every one of his carries against Purdue, he gained at least 1 yard. Now, it does not necessarily mean that every carry was tremendous and a huge success, but Jordan Marshall just does not lose yards or even fail to gain a yard all that often. It's one of his really unique skill sets. So him as a bell cow, he's kind of one of those, almost Derrick Henry types, not trying to say he's as good as one of the best running backs of all time, but just that Jordan Marshall needs, I think, a good dose of carries to really make a full impact on a game, and he certainly did that. I think he was the difference in the win over the Boilermakers for Michigan. So we'll see just how much they lean on him. Remember last year when Donovan Edwards was struggling or injured, it was Kalel Mullings that Sharon Moore and company leaned on. I would not be surprised to see the same type of mentality for a guy in Jordan Marshall who so far has seemed capable of being able to shoulder that significant load.
Marshall over 100 carries this season. He's only lost yardage on one of those carries, as he has done that week in, week out. Bryce Underwood, not his best performance against the Boilermakers. Are we seeing regression from the freshman quarterback? Are we seeing defenses catch up to him, or is it much ado about nothing at this point?
I think it was a freshman game. You look back, I thought his best performance of the season was against Washington. Against Michigan State, Michigan was just having all that success on the ground, and I didn't really pay too much attention to Bryce Underwood's box score. Wasn't worried at all. This one, certainly not his best, and there'll be some throws he wishes he could have had back, and not just based on the result, but also how they were executed. That red zone interception that he made, he had another receiver open on the play, but more importantly, just the mechanics weren't quite there. He looked like he had the ability to run for a first down and maybe got a little bit too aggressive. Same deal with that fumble near the goal line. It's something that Michigan preaches consistently. Don't risk the football around the goal line offensively because it can have a huge effect if it goes out of bounds in the end zone. So I think the bye week, certainly for the injured players, that's the most important stable of Michigan players who will benefit hopefully from this bye week. Outside of that, I think another couple of weeks for Bryce Underwood to kind of survey the scene, get some more film time, work with Chip Lindsey as offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach, because Michigan has plenty to play for still, and his upside is still enormous. Let's see if he can elevate that downside, that floor of his, because, boy, the upside's great. You just can't have a floor performance again, especially at the end of the month.
And I think if you look at that Purdue game, if you don't look at the final score, if you don't look at the box score, if you actually watch that game, there's a couple of things that were going on. Now, you pointed out the two red zone turnovers for Michigan. And, of course, the game ended with Michigan in the red zone. They chose to take a knee, so they could have scored more points than the 21. But the interesting thing was kind of the ebb and flow of that game where Purdue had those long, drawn-out offensive series, and Michigan was scoring quickly. So I think it was a little bit difficult for Michigan's offense to get into a rhythm because they weren't on the field that often, and when they were scoring quickly.
Yeah, it's a good point, Mark, because going into the fourth quarter, Michigan was losing the time of possession roughly, not exactly this, but 29 minutes to 16 minutes. And then with Jordan Marshall mostly leading the way, Michigan was around 11-4 in time of possession in the money quarter, the fourth quarter. So, yeah, I do think that's part of it. Now, it's certainly incumbent upon Michigan's defense to ensure there is not a consistent 9.5-minute drive like Purdue had, because while, yeah, you could say that maybe it should have been a little bit more lopsided, but, this was a Purdue team that came in winless in the Big Ten. It was probably Michigan's worst performance of the season. But hey, sometimes sequencing is key in life, and Michigan picked the right time to have its worst, at least Big Ten performance of the season. No question it's got to get better, but there are signs, there are positives, even if it wasn't a great showing.
Speaking of sequencing, Michigan has the week off, and then they're on the road for the next two games, taking on Northwestern at Wrigley, then going to Maryland, two teams in the bottom half of the Big Ten for the season finale against, of course, Ohio State. And as you referred to earlier, everything is still in front of this Michigan team. They are very much in the race for the Big Ten, very much in the race for the college football playoff. So this is a time to take a week off to refocus to get ready for the stretch run.
Yeah, it's so interesting, Mark, and I think we've talked about this in recent weeks. It's very simple for Michigan. There's, with all due respect to the fine folks of the College Football Playoff Committee, if you're a Michigan fan, you don't really care what the rankings say, because if Michigan wins out, they're almost certainly in the playoff. If they lose any game the rest of the year, they're almost certainly out of the playoffs. So just win it in. The playoff started for Michigan when they landed back in Michigan after the USC trip. 10-2 was almost always going to get them in. 9-3 or worse was almost always going to have them miss the playoffs. I do harken back to last year a little bit, though, Mark, because Michigan, remember, they lost 4 of 5 heading into their second bye week. It was a week later. This week last year, Michigan played Indiana, then went on the bye. But they rekindled something. They found something in that second bye week, because remember, they had their most dominant performance the next week against Northwestern, who Michigan this year faces next up. And then they found a way to go to Columbus and win before taking down a really good Alabama team in the bowl game. So we'll see if they can rekindle some of that from last season, because going into that second bye week, it looked a lot more bleak than it is right now. It looks just fine for Michigan. Could they play better? Absolutely. But is everything on the table for them? Maybe even a Big Ten championship if things break a certain way? Yes. So we'll see if they can find some of that magic they found during their what they call Improvement Week Part 2 here this week.
You want to be peaking in November, and Michigan is poised to do just that as they hope to get a little bit healthier as they finish up the regular season. I want to thank Brian Boesch from the Michigan Wolverine Radio Network for joining us. Brian, thank you once again.
Have a great week, Mark.